Welcome to the Dr. Boz Show. I have a great show for you tonight, and I get to introduce my friend and one of the stars hidden behind a story on the Dr. Boz Channel, Stacey. So welcome to this channel, Stacey, and we are super excited to not just tell your story a little bit better, but show everybody where we're taking your therapy to the next level. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for allowing me to push record and show the world that Stacey, she's a real human being, and she has been an excellent teacher for several of the patients, and you never knew what she looked like. This is the first time we've introduced Stacey. All right, Stacey, I want you to introduce yourself and then tell us what brought you to the keto world.
So my name is Stacy Bassoon, and I'm a nurse practitioner, and just from researching a little bit after patients would continuously come in and kind of have issues with weight loss and things like that, it kind of led me down the road of realizing that glucose and insulin were the main cause of a lot of the problems that we were seeing as opposed to fat. And so just a little more exploration into that, and I was pretty much sold.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take long today to look and find lots of resources out there for the ketogenic diet. As we had been in circles together, worked out together, and just our kids are in similar school systems here in Sioux Falls, we could see that our community has a huge problem with obesity in all ages of people. But as you looked at your health, you're not overweight. You have a great healthy lifestyle. What was the tipping point where you said, I think I want to try this myself?
So it actually first started last summer when Dr. Boz gave me her book, and I had an interest in it then, but it was a little bit of a stressful time, and she doesn't really recommend starting something that, at that kind of phase in life. So this year, when it was just more a situation of just little bits of acne that were kind of just coming from nowhere, and being in kind of a skincare world, I thought to myself, why can I not just get rid of this when I'm doing everything? And then on top of it, a little bit of tiredness, and, we don't really see weight loss when we're working out anymore like we used to, even if we think we're
Isn't that evil? Yes,
eating.
as you get older, you're like, what do you mean? I worked out 5 times this week. This didn't do anything.
Nope, not at all. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Boz said, I know what will fix you, but you might not like it.
That is a masterpiece of understatement. Stacey is a strong woman who has lots of information about how to help her patients. So to come in with a counterculture idea that I don't want you counting fat or calories, I only want you counting carbs, and then I want you to check your data. Ooh, that was again, timing matters. When she was going through the stress of transitioning, I said, nope, we're not going to talk about this until you're done with that part. So on the other side, again, acne isn't something that should happen as we're women past that teenage growth time. It really shouldn't happen then either, but in our world today, lots of acne happens then. When you get past that and it reoccurs, the first thing I think of is there is an inflammatory state that is abnormal. And that's what led me to say, just trust me, watch what happens when we decrease your insulin. So I want you to tell the folks about the time when I said, all right, I want you to check your numbers and then put them on this spreadsheet that teaches us about that. Did that sound like it was, as before you checked your first blood sugar and ketones, you'd biohacked a few things, but had you ever really checked things that closely?
I would not have said I checked my blood to know those type of markers prior to that, although I love to see data, but it's all kind of a secondary transmitted through various devices that are not like, this is your sugar in real time.
Real time, that's so powerful. And I think that is one of my favorite sayings about the ketogenic diet. You'll know if you're on it because you're either in ketosis and have ketones in circulation, or you're not. And it is immeasurable, not by coming to my clinic 3 times or 4 times a year, but really pricking your finger throughout the day, or when you're irritated, or when you're happy, or when you're celebrating. Yeah, so real-time data. And tell me, as we're going to hop over and look at her spreadsheet here just a second, because I think there's some great questions to ask her about the spreadsheet when she was kind of discovering, why is this so hard for my body to, bring those ketones up? The glucose were actually pretty well controlled. Mm-hmm. But if you look at some of that first 2 weeks when you were checking blood sugars, do you happen to recall just what was frustrating?
All of it, honestly. But it was more, I think, because the ketone levels, you kind of read a little bit about the, ketogenic diet, and it looks like people can pretty much get into ketosis relatively soon if they're,
Yes.
doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I was just seeing these awful ketones. I'm like, where are they? I don't think I'm using them. So why am I not generating ketones? And so that was extremely frustrating, knowing that a lot of the benefit of keto comes from that elevated level of ketones.
Right. All right. So we're going to hop over and look at her spreadsheet real quick. So let me just remind folks, if you are looking for a spreadsheet, you'll find the link in the show notes. That is free. This is the Dr. Boz spreadsheet, which helps you calculate what is your Dr. Boz ratio, but also what is your glucose to ketone index. Both of those numbers are used. The GKI is often used in research projects, and it does have a little bit more math if you're from America. We use different units of measurement, so I just simplified that, and we call it the Dr. Boz ratio, where you take your glucose and you divide by your ketones. So we're going to take a look here. If you'll notice, Stacey started out her journey in September of 2019. I want everybody to take a notice of this column here in black. The ketones are something that she was measuring as well as her glucose. And although the first couple of days were pretty good, she quickly gets into a zone where it's 0.1, 0.4, 0.3, she got a 0.8 and a 0.5. I think that 1.3 wasn't that the time that you went 4 miles of exercise there?
Yep, I went for a 4-mile walk.
You say that you say you shouldn't have to increase your exercise that far to get your ketones to rise. Do you remember what you were thinking when you looked at some of these ketones that were pretty low?
Well, it was kind of early on, and I knew that I had probably been eating lots of fun carbs for a very long time. And I'm like, okay, in Dr. Boz's book, talks about the way that you store your glucose in your liver. And I'm like, okay, I must just have a lot of glucose to be emptying. And that, of course, triggers the production of insulin, which doesn't allow the ketones to rise. So that was kind of my thought process. And I was thinking, okay, just give it time, be patient, and just trust the process.
Right. Okay, so we're scrolling through, looking at some of these ketones and these glucoses, and remembering her story where she was frustrated. She's like, this is not the diet for me. I don't care that it's got great science behind it. Help me. And you look at that November 5th area and you start to see a little bit of, there was a 1 and then, actually, here we go. Yeah, where it starts to see ketones were
skyrocket.
Yes,
To where they were.
now we're like, okay. So tell folks what happened during that week.
So that was the week that Dr. Boz said to start drinking some exogenous ketones. And so, of course, me being me, I'm like, how much, when, how often? But so ultimately sipping them throughout my work day. And so I would go in with one and I would make sure that I sipped that throughout the day with the intent of hopefully teaching my body kind of how to make and then use ketones. Right.
And when we go back and we study how well her system had been compensating, I think that is a powerful moment. We're going to come back and talk about that in just a second when we flip off of this spreadsheet. I want to get up to the recent couple of weeks because you were able to push through that. And then what did you do with those supplements?
So then I, for a little period of time, I switched over and I did some of the capsules. I would take them when I knew that my glucose might be a little bit high to see if I would keep my glucose down so that my ketones wouldn't drop. And so that was my little self-experimentation where I found that my glucose pretty much stayed low enough to have those ketones be high so that I would have good ratios just as long as I was taking some kind of the BHB.
Right. So I just want you to look at the list of ketones here in the month of December. So again, this is not the heavy supplement phase that she was in where I said, I don't want you to think about it. I want you to put these ketones in circulation and then just keep checking. And we did that for a couple of weeks, at which point there was a cellular shift where now her body not only knew what to do with ketones, so the hunger was a little less, but she could produce ketones out of that liver, her liver cells, much better. And those capsules do not have a lot of BHB in them, so she could take a tiny little capsules, 2 or 3 of them.
It was like 2.
And honestly shoot her ketones up. That's not all from the supplement. That's just a little trigger of an exogenous ketone, so she did swallow it, but her body did the rest of the work, and I think that's the powerful teaching point there. I think that's a huge teaching point that I wish I could show people time and time again when they say, I'm frustrated, I can't make it work. And I say, quit trying so hard. Just use the supplement until that cellular chemistry can be ready. Because I think you might be the most disciplined person ever that went that long not getting ketones to respond. When I look and say, well, why did that happen? The same reason that acne would have been easy for Stacey's body to kind of stay in a steady state of producing, acne over weeks to months, where you say, this should be gone. I do this for patients and it's gone. Why isn't it gone in my system? And that is a chronic inflammatory state. So what was happening in her system, and if you go back and look at the spreadsheet, she keeps her glucose nice and controlled. If only checking glucose, you would never think that she has a high insulin state. And that's how so many of our patients live, not coming to the clinic, not telling us that they have a problem. And finally, it's after we start doing either they wait 10 years and they have sleep apnea and a fat tummy and a metabolic syndrome, skin tags, all the kinds of things that high insulin shows us as physicians, or we get them to check ketones and glucose at the same time. And I think if there's one caveat to the difference between a paleo diet or a grass-fed diet or other forms of how can we improve our health, the part that helps me with the ketogenic diet is I need you checking, I need you helping me gather the data, and you really don't need a physician to march you through a lot of that, especially in the state that Stacey was in. But if they can't get through the threshold, showing them some of the biohacks, like you're not going to need ketones forever. Trust me on this. Just drink them for 2 weeks, watch what happens, and then your system will truly kick into a time where producing ketones is not as hard as it sounds, as soon as the body's ready to do that. So let's move on to what we're going to do today. So why don't you share some of the curiosity you have and how we got to I'll let you announce what we're going to do.
So today we are going to place a continuous glucose monitor because, again, I love data, I love numbers, and I hadn't really seen Dr. Boz do that on the show yet, and that wasn't just the main thing, but I was like, I bet I can get her to do this with me.
Yes.
Because now that I'm at the point where I'm at, I kind of want to know what specifically is affecting my insulin and my glucose. So it's more to that fine-tuning effect of the plan now, just because I want to know, am I having a reaction to stevia? Is there a particular food or substance or a certain time where I'm seeing that this insulin is released? Because every time that insulin's released, my ketones go down and then I feel less good.
Right.
So cravings and hunger and all that. So I think it's going to be great to be able to see what is affecting it.
And I think this totally feeds into when I look at the change that I'm asking patients to do. If it's hidden, it's hard for their feedback to really stay consistent as we get them to the other side of feeling well. But finger checks are one point of care, but it does require a poke and you have to kind of take time for it. When you move on to something like a continuous glucose monitor, these are awesome. They've been around in our market for 10 or 15 years and really were marketed at type 1 diabetics wanting a constant level of checking their sugar so we could administer a constant level of insulin that would match their needs. And although that's been life-saving for many patients, I think this is an even more interesting place to use it. You do need a prescription for this, so you do have to go to your doctor to get that. I would love to change that pattern, but right now you still need that. The whole process for Stacey's investment was around $150, $170, somewhere in there.
Not that.
Yeah, to get the meter, and then it comes with I prescribed two sensors that will last about 14 days. I think it's strategic that we're doing this over the holidays.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Almost evil. So kids' treats, and I think every night of my kids' schedule is filled for the next 5 days, but it's also been filled for the last 15 days. Good luck. I'm not wearing the glucose monitor during this time. All right, I just want to say a super special thank you for Stacey being on our channel, using her story to teach so many of you that the ketogenic diet isn't just for folks with type 2 diabetes or overweight, but it really is the healthiest way that we all live with ketones for life. I would like to have you follow Stacey on her social media and then just give her praise for being our teacher and being willing to be on the channel and share her story. So how do they follow you?
My personal account is just my name, so that's Stacy Bassoon, and they'll link that in the show notes. But also we'll probably be doing a little bit more with the keto weight loss on our business page, which is JMISKOSD, so that's JMISKOSD. And so we'll have a little bit of both on there.
Right. She works at making people beautiful, which she does a great job of. So we will see you next week, guys. We are the Dr. Boz Channel, improving your health one ketone at a time. Until next week.